Sorry, what was the question?
We were talking about her... I'm lost as well. It's because she's so mercurial, she's hard to pin down.
The different sides of her, so...
her snobby side.
Her
that
snobby
was it.
side.
Yeah.
I wanted to... the complexities of Anne Lister I love the fact that she wasn't... she wasn't a goodie by any means. She's really, really complex.
Yeah.
I think that's... it was important, because anyone who knows the diaries as well will probably have an opinion about Anne Lister, and that sometimes she's quite unlikable. But, of course, by the time we meet her, she's 41, so she's started to dress the way she's dressed because it's armour, and she's decided to present herself in the world this way. She's running her business. She's had her love affairs and been heartbroken, and now she's and every time that happens, she's put on another layer. She's changed her accent because she's a social climber. She behaves in different ways depending on where she is in society and social situations. So, and she can be rude to Marion because it's a sibling relationship, and God, the way that you talk to your family, is when you've got that familiarity can be harsh. So we had fun with that. The way that she speaks to some of her servants can be harsh, but then also Sally's put in the bits where she needs to do that to show that she's in charge, because she's a woman running a house as well. So she has to behave in a certain way. Even in 2019, women have to behave in a certain way to a point to get what they want. And, we're getting there and we're having this great conversation at this time. But I think when people see her in a certain light, it's because she had to behave that way. But then Sally does have these brilliant moments where you just capture the complete vulnerability and courage that it takes to exist as her in that way.
Because Marion is talking about her staying at all of these women's houses, and obviously there's a kind of subtext to that we're supposed to understand. But is it fair to say that she got about a bit in her time, Anne Lister?
Yeah. She absolutely loved sex. Yeah, she loved women and she loved sex. I mean, talking to our advisor, the pool of women that she could choose from is quite small, because you have to be very careful who you're talking to. The women that she had affairs with or dalliances with or fell in love with often then went on to marry men for love or to keep appearances or for money. So, yeah, she then moved on and had... But every time we talked about... when we talked about each of the women you see in these 8 episodes, they were very different relationships. So we spent a lot of time talking about each one. And then there's a brilliant relationship with Mariana, which lasts... had they known each other for 17 years by this point?
Yes.
So that was a real historical relationship that comes back in episode 1. Or she comes in
episode 1, and then later on there's a big Mariana episode.
So that's a brilliant kind of that's a particular relationship, and then we have the new relationship where you see myself and Sophie, the brilliant Sophie Rundle, play out, because it's basically her coming out story as well as us getting together, and also it's on her patch for once. And then we see Veer Hobart, who Anne Lister is running away from, and that's why she's coming back to Halifax. And that one went completely wrong. Sally will be able to tell you a bit more about that, because she thought she was heading into a relationship with someone of a high class, and she wasn't interested in women, was she, actually? She wasn't interested in...
Veer was fascinated by Anne.
But not in that.
But not in that way. So the story actually starts in episode 1, when she's coming back on the High Flyer. Anne's come back from Hastings, where she's had her heart broken. She was absolutely besotted with Veer Hobart. And we see a bit of what happened in retrospect, where Veer, like a lot of Anne's lovers, not that they were quite lovers, Veer and Anne, takes the conventional route of marrying a man, and Anne's left devastated, absolutely devastated. And that's where we start the story, when she comes back to Shibden.
How was she able to live this life at this time in quite such plain sight, do you think?
It was a combination of I think it's largely her intelligence, her ability to negotiate very skillfully through society, to run rings around people, to not allow people to challenge her over it. And she was very true to herself. You know, she could have, and it's kind of discussed in episode 1, she never contemplated a lavender marriage, ever. She knew she wanted to be with a woman. And the other thing as well is that there wasn't language for it in the way that we have a lot of language now. You know, the reference, I mean, the title Gentleman Jack meant dyke, lesbian.
Right.
So it was either very vulgar language like that, or very sort of posh language like wintering in Rome. Things like that. So nobody could actually call her out on it. And if they'd got anywhere close to it, she would just run rings around them. She was a great conversationalist. She was very charismatic, and she was just unusually clever.
Why do you think it's taken so long for her to be celebrated as who she was now?
I think because people haven't been aware of her. I mean, as I say, when I used to visit Shibden in the 1970s as a kid, there was no. I don't recall any references to Anne Lister. She wasn't somebody that they showed off about. And I became aware of her. I can't even remember the first time I heard her name. I became aware of her very, very gradually, in the 90s. And I think she's been hidden away. She's been not shown off about until now, and the time is just right now. When we do talk, the conversations about sexuality and gender are just becoming more. Everybody's just able to be articulate about things like that now.
And it seems both of you have spoken about how much of an effect Anne Lister herself has had on your lives. Suranne, do you want to talk about? It must be very inspirational to spend that much time as someone so extraordinary.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, the whole the 8 months that I spent in Yorkshire, you come out the other end feeling like, I mean, obviously, we talk about her love affairs, and it's a great celebration of a lesbian woman. But I think besides from that as well, what she was doing at that time, she was so. It's a lesson in courage, in being authentic, having a voice and using it, standing up for yourself. There's a message within class there of how everyone has a right to be educated. She's so, the more you delve into her, and then on top of that, the fact that she got married in 1834, because she was, the talk in the diaries are of wife and wife, and she absolutely knew that that's what she wanted. And as Sally said, there was no, lesbian wasn't a word then, there was no community, there was no blueprint for what she was doing. She was just being herself, because that's what she says nature intended. She could only love the fairer sex. And as you're playing her, you just become aware that you have a right to be a person, and you have a right to be who you are, regardless of your sexuality. And we talked a lot about how uplifting and how I've done a lot of shows, if you know my work, I'm sure you know, that are quite dark. Dr. Foster was about betrayal and that sticky stuff within a marriage. Save Me and Frozen were about paedophilia and losing a child. They're very dark subjects, which of course we're all drawn to. You know, me and my husband just started on series 3 of Line of Duty. We're addicted, Scott and Bailey. You know, we all want to know. I understand why that's so popular, but with this, it's I think whether you love it or hate it, you go along with a person that, as you're watching, goes, I want to be a bit more like this person, and she kind of teaches you how to. And I've started a diary as well, which is something I never thought I'd do, but I've been doing it since Christmas.
Are we going to decode it in 200
No, because it's really boring. My diary is really boring.
Start with the temperature.
No, but I should do. But it's dull when you write a diary. Like went to my coffee shop, gave my son, you know, ready break. I mean, and then every now and then you'll get a bit of juice of, like, you think, oh, I'll write that about this person, whatever. But it's, yeah, you can't say enough about how inspiring she is. I remember an actress on set said to me, "You should be more like Anne Lister because it suits you." And I think that's because I know I talk a lot when I'm nervous and I'm in front of people, but I'm quite a shy person, really, and quite a private person. But I think she just can teach us all a lesson or two, regardless of sex and with gender, like Sally said. She just challenges that. Even back then, if she was sat here now in 2019, we'd still say, "You're a fucking amazing woman." Like, oh my God. And I think that's the point of her.
Just to add to that, one of the things I always think about Anne Lister, and again, it's reading between the lines of the journal and, you know, being familiar with it over a long period of time. One of the things that I've always think about her is that she enjoyed really good mental health. And this is what people often say, this is an insult about people, but I don't think of this at all as an insult with Anne Lister. She had a really good opinion of herself. She had a really healthy sense of her own self-worth. And I think that's something I like to take away from Anne Lister. You know, we could all do with a dose of that.
Yeah. I think we should open this up to the audience. And I should say as well that this is on in May. We can't give specific dates, but it's on very soon. So if anyone has any questions, raise your hand and we'll bring the microphone to you.
It was a 90-minute single and it covered her whole life. So there's just too much to say about Anne Lister in 90 minutes. We've covered just under 2 years in 8 hours. And even then we've had to leave a lot out. So I felt it was too... I mean, it was fine. I'm not sorry, I'm here to criticise it, but it tended to look at the earlier part of her life in a bit more detail before she inherited Shibden, when she was just being a bit of a one with the women, which is fine. But when she inherited Shibden, she just became a lot more complex. She was spinning a lot more plates. She was doing a lot more things, and the more she had to do, the more adept she became at it. So for me, Anne Lister's always been a lot more fascinating after she inherited Shibden, and I think they kind of skirted over that. And Anne Walker was just a kind of afterthought towards the end of the drama, where it was just Anne Walker and Anne Lister potting around in a potting shed, as far as I recall, together. And you know, these are two women who explored Europe together. You know, they explored the most outrageous, outlandish places in Eastern Europe, and so I mean, I think it added just a different agenda to what we've done. I think and I think the person who wrote it didn't know the journals.
I mean, if you get a second series, will you take them off to Europe on these adventures?
Yeah, God. I mean, there's a lot more. Yeah, there's some really exciting places to go if we did get another series. That I don't want to spoil the end, but where it ends is where things really start to take off. So I don't really know. I mean, I find women. I love writing for women. I find women heroic. I think women are really heroic. I think they. Before they even start, they have so much more to deal with than men. Sorry. I think I'm quite rare. I just like writing for women. That's what excites me. I am a woman. I'm inside a woman's head. So, for me on TV, you often don't see characters explored as well as I want them to be explored. And that's my job. I can explore them as well as I like. So I create characters who I want to see, who I personally want to see on screen.
Well, so we're on series 3. So we've just finished because everyone just said how brilliant it was. Me and my hubby said, and also Lenny was in series 1, and I'd promised him, and Save Me is up for a BAFTA, so before I see him again, I had to watch it, because I can't bear to say to him again, I will watch you in it. So we started again. So I don't know, but it's brilliant. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
My hubby says, shut up, because it's a cop show that affects you, and you just want to be part of it. I think Jed's a brilliant writer, Yeah.
So get your legend speaking to chairs, and I think if you could.
Well, she's here. Yeah, she could talk to some people and see if I can get in that. But yeah, it's great. And like I said, cop shows are great. People just love them.
I think we've run out of time, sadly, so there's no time for any more questions. But please join me in thanking Suranne and Sally.